moving on. After anaerobic respiration, this is the process, right? In glycolysis, is oxygen present? No, right? So in glycolysis, no oxygen is present. And then basically, if there's no oxygen present after glycolysis, you have two pyruvates that are made after glycolysis. We're going to produce ethanol, lactate, or other products. So we're going to learn about fermentation. Different cells, yeast cells specifically, what happens if there's no oxygen presence? They're going to create alcohol. That is how beer works. That is how wine works, right? Ethanol is a byproduct of that. Also, your Coke cans, they are carbonated because they go through fermentation as well. That's why we're going to make root beer. Next week, we're going to go through a process where a byproduct is both ethanol and CO2. That's why it's carbonated. But I'm going to refrigerate the root beer. There will be no alcohol, so that's why it will be root beer.
Boring. Sprite has like alcohol in it?
No, not. It went through a fermentation process, but there is no alcohol.
So how do they get rid of it?
They put it into a refrigerator
Wait,
while it's going through the process.
so it doesn't make alcohol?
Okay, that's a good
Yeah, do you want me to show you the actual lab that we're going to do?
Wait, so why is it that like when it's cold it doesn't like...
No, it just matters. So alcoholic fermentation we're going to learn next, actually in this class specifically. Alcoholic fermentation happens when they build up alcohol, and there's a process in which you can stop the alcohol production if you refrigerate while it's going through the actual fermentation. Yeah, so. Are you? So, there are two different types of respiration, both anaerobic and aerobic, right? So fermentation is when there is no oxygen present, but when oxygen present, where do those two pyruvates go immediately after? They go into pyruvate oxidation, citric acid cycle, and then oxidative phosphorylation. You could produce way more ATP in aerobic respiration, so regular cellular respiration, than you do fermentation. So after glycolysis produces those two pyruvates, there will be a cycle in which glycolysis will keep regenerating NAD+ to create NADH, and it'll be a cycle, but no oxygen is needed. So it creates both ethanol, CO2, or lactate. Humans, do we produce ethanol in our bodies when we are producing fermentation? No, we produce lactate, lactic acid. So that's why you get lactic acid buildup when you start working out. But the total amount of ATP that you produce in fermentation is what? 2. Because how many ATP does glycolysis produce? 2. But in regular respiration, how much ATP is totally produced? 32. 28 in oxidative phosphorylation, 2 in the citric acid cycle, and 2 in glycolysis. Does this make sense? I think I'm doing stuff right. You guys understanding this a little bit?
Yeah.
Lots of what? Explain.
I feel like there's like 2 different things happening, and
Like, are you confused about like the differences between the two, or?
I'm confused more so like the specifics in each 2.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So basically, anaerobic, when there's no oxygen present, it's not going to go through the citric acid cycle. So 2 pyruvates are made at the end of glycolysis,
Right.
and if there's oxygen present, it's going to go through regular cellular respiration. But if there's no oxygen present, it's going to go through fermentation.
Okay.
And so it's going to cycle through glycolysis, continue cycling through glycolysis to produce 2 ATP. And so that's why you can continue to work out. You build ATP in your muscles, but you get a byproduct of lactate. But which one do you produce more ATP in? Fermentation or regular cellular respiration? Yeah, respiration a lot, right? Because Krebs cycle, you're producing more electron carriers to go over to the ETC to produce.
So right
oxygen.
now, so right now we learned like the general cycle, and now we're like
Branching off.
branching.
Yeah, so regular cellular respiration, that's what we go through. But a lot of prokaryotes, do they need oxygen to survive? No. There's a lot of bacteria, there's a lot of things that don't need bacteria to survive. We're going to learn about yeast cells can produce for a while. Because again, originally on planet Earth, hundreds of millions of years ago, was there any oxygen present in the atmosphere? No. So basically, they survived just using glycolysis, regenerating, going through glycolysis in creating NADH and NAD+, and it was a complete cycle. How you guys doing?
Better.
Can I move on?
Yes.
We only got 10 more slides today.
No, that's it.
Not too bad today, right?
We're having a good pace.
Yeah. Is everyone tired today? Was the SAT and like the SAT to like completely drain you?
No, I'm filming. And
You did not fail. What do you mean?
no, I'm filming.
Oh, you're filming.
I'm having a Denny's now.
I want Denny's.
Denny
I feel
sounds
like
really
we're
good
more
right now.
focused when we
Denny, I feel like the Denny.
Do you? Because you feel like you can't say
No,
certain
that's
things.
not-
Like,
Well,
I'm gonna watch what I say.
I used to say things, what's gonna happen? I'm gonna get fired.
So, there are two different types of fermentation. There's alcoholic fermentation and lactic acid fermentation. So after those pyruvates were made in glycolysis, right? If there's no oxygen present, it's gonna produce ethanol and CO2, carbon dioxide. So whenever you have a drink that is carbonated, right? You drink any drink that is carbonated, soda. It went through a process called alcoholic fermentation. There's no alcohol present, right? But because of that byproduct of CO2, it is carbonated. So bacteria, yeast, brewing, winemaking, and baking, they all go through alcoholic fermentation. So have you ever used yeast to make bread? What does yeast do? It makes it rise. Because of the actual fermentation of those yeast cells, it expands. That's why if you make bread, you want to put yeast in so it can expand, and then there's pockets of air, right? So there's pockets because of that baking process, because of that carbon dioxide. But in human cells, in fungi and muscle cells, you produce lactate. So this is how to make cheese, yogurt, acetone, and methanol. What?
Oh, we can make cheese, yogurt, nail polish remover, and gas.
True. It's funny that they have all of these different like foods, and they're like acetone. That is to scrub off like major cleaning supplies too, because they use acetone.
Those are all foods.
Those are all foods. Do not drink nail polish, please. That is a no-go.
Don't drink nail polish. You can drink remover.
Yeah, you could drink the remover, but you cannot. You can drink the actual nail polish.
Did you?
Yes.
Okay. Isn't there a thing where like people are able to make like alcohol and or wine in prison?
Yeah, I don't know.
They use sugar, they use sugar to like put the yeast.
That's what we're gonna do when we're making our actual root beer. So we literally take glucose, right? Because glucose is the first step of what? Cellular respiration. We're gonna close the lid so that they can't get any oxygen, those yeast cells, and then what are they gonna produce? Carbon dioxide and alcohol to actually make it go through that process. So you give it its food, because yeast cells, are they alive? Yeah, and they produce carbon dioxide and alcoholic fermentation to actually produce it.
I think Mr. Henry would be a good moonshiner. From their knowledge.
No.
Mr. Hank, can you make moonshine?
Have you seen Who Framed Jessica Rabbit?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Okay, you know how it like the black tar or whatever